So as you probably know, I've done a lot of Vim videos. In fact, I think Vim is probably my second biggest category outside of just regular software showcases. I think software showcases, it's somewhere in the realm of like 130, 140 videos at this point. And the Vim videos, it's around 40 or 50. And most of the Vim videos I've done have been on plugins. Now, I have done a couple of videos on like vanilla Vim stuff, but most of what I covered has been on plugins. And that's because I don't really care what vanilla Vim can really do. I'll talk a bit more about that in just a bit, but vanilla Vim is sort of just there as a baseline. I don't really think it's something that needs to be maintained. Now, this leads me into what I wanted to talk about today, and that is that I've noticed there's typically two groups of critical people on those Vim videos. One of them I really appreciate, the other one I find to be a little bit annoying. And if you're in the second group, if you're in the second group, you're gonna know exactly who you are. So the people that I appreciate are the people who, will come into the videos and then suggest things that could be done better. So they'll be like, hey, you're using NerdTree. Have you considered that NetTree exists, and this is a plugin that's actually built into regular Vim? And I was like, hey, I didn't know about that. I thought I need an extra plugin to have this file tree, and I tried it out, and I thought it was cool. Or there were things where, say for example, I was doing some sort of movement which was a little bit slower than what I otherwise could be doing with their improved method. And I tried it out, and I was like, yeah, okay, that actually is a better method to move around in Vim. And I actually started doing that, and I really appreciated that. So those people are really nice because they typically, make my job easier. I've gotten a lot of videos out of people suggesting plugins like that, and I just really appreciate those comments. The people who annoy me, though, are the people who seem to think that their one way of using Vim is the one true way of using Vim, and every other way is just inferior to what they're doing. Now, obviously, you're going to prefer your method of using Vim, but I don't really care what other people are doing with their versions of Vim. If they want to use vanilla Vim, they can use vanilla Vim. If they want to use space Vim, they can use space Vim. I don't really care. I think obviously my method is the best for me, but the people I'm talking about are the people who seem to think that you have to be using the editor in the way that they say the editor has to be used, otherwise you're using it wrong. So I've gotten a lot of comments saying, hey, you shouldn't be using this plugin because vanilla Vim already does this, or hey, why are you trying to build up a code editor because Space Vim already exists, or Doom Emacs exists, or various other distributions of these editors. Why are you trying to build up your own thing? That's a big waste of time. You should just go and use what already exists. And I think these people sort of misunderstand what I value in, I guess, my Linux experience. So, as you probably know, I use a window manager. Now, if I didn't care about, building up something myself, I would perfectly be happy using something like KDE, XFC, GNOME. They all do the job fairly well. Like, if I just wanted an experience, or I just wanted a computer that worked, I would use something like that, because if I didn't care, obviously I'm not going to spend all the time trying to, build something up for myself. But that's the thing that I sort of value, and that's the reason why I use a window manager, and that's the reason why I use something like NeoVim, or I use a bunch of other minimal applications like that, because I want to build up something that I can say is truly mine. I don't want to say, okay, here's this thing that I have, I've gone and downloaded it, it does everything I need to do, and that's basically the end of it. I want to say, okay, this is, the editor that I built myself. This is the desktop environment I built myself. This is the operating system I built myself. I want to say that this is the experience that I'm having on my system, and this is something that I have, truly made, customized for me. Obviously, you can do customization in something like Doom Emacs, and you can start with that as your starting point, or Space Vim. You can start with it as your starting point and then, completely rebuild it. Obviously, that's a thing you can do, but if I'm going to be building something up that is going to just be mine, I find it easier to start from, the smallest possible point and then building up from there, rather than trying to tear down an existing system and then trying to build up whatever I want from that. So that's just sort of how I prefer to work. Obviously, if you do want to build up something custom from Space Vim, feel free to do so. Or if you want to, just use Space Vim as it comes out of the box, feel free to do that as well. But I have had a lot of these people saying that trying to build up a code editor from Vim is a waste of time because these things already exist. Obviously, those had initially started as base installs of Emacs or base installs of Vim. So obviously, saying there's no point trying to build up a code editor because those exist doesn't really make any sense, because those were originally just base installs of those applications. So this is what I value in the way that I use my Linux system. So even though those exist, feel free to use them. I'm not going to do that myself though. Now, another thing is with the vanilla Vim stuff. As I mentioned earlier, I don't really care about vanilla Vim as, an idea. I'm kind of using most of vanilla Vim key bindings because it's something that I've really gotten used to. It's not something that I actively chose to do. If I initially had said, okay, I don't like, for example, yank being on Y, and then I changed that back when I first started using Vim, I would get used to it at some point. I don't think that the vanilla Vim experience is, this holy experience that must be left as it must be left, because Vim is full of historical inconsistencies. So for example, go look at what capital Y does, and I think it was capital C. Capital Y doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So there are things like this that have kind of stuck with Vim because either they were implemented wrong, 20 years ago, and then no one bothered to fix them, and now everyone seems to think that this is the way that Vim was supposed to be, or just, I guess people have gotten used to it. I think that's the big thing though. People have just gotten used to the way that Vim works and have just accepted that this is the way it must work. But I don't really care about that. I'm gonna make Vim work the way that I want it to work because it's a very simple editor and it's something that I can build up the way that I want it to be built up. And it seems like some people also think that I keep around every single plugin that I've covered in every single one of my videos. For example, I've covered a couple of ways to do things like colors in Vim. And obviously I don't have them all around at the same time because they'd all conflict with each other. Or another one would be I've covered nerd tree and I've covered net true. Obviously, once I switched over to net true, I would have had to get rid of nerd tree because having two file explorers installed at the same time doesn't really make much sense. Or a very recent example was with Vim org mode. So the main way that I do notes is with VimWiki, and VimWiki is a much, much better way to do it than using the org mode plugin for Vim. But talking about org mode actually leads me into something else. There were a lot of people saying that you shouldn't use the Vim org mode plugin because you should be using Emacs if you want org mode, or that if you want to use org mode, you have to be doing it in Emacs. There's no reason that it should be available in Vim. And I don't really see any, point in making that argument, because one of the things I like about Vim is that you can go and build up these plugins that do, really anything you want them to do. If you want to go and try to bring org mode into Vim, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. Obviously, at this point, it's not going to be a great experience, but if you wanted to actually put in that work and, make it a proper plugin that is going to properly bring over org mode, bring over all of the features, and then you can even start, say, porting plugins from Emacs over into Vim to make it so you actually could use those extra Emacs plugins inside of Vim. There's no reason why you shouldn't do that. Even though the org mode is something that Emacs has made, and it's sort of one of the things that makes Emacs popular, there's no reason why if someone wants to bring that over to Vim, they shouldn't be able to do that. Because if you're going to look at it from the same place that I look at where I'm trying to build up my editor, I'm trying to build up something that is truly my own. And if you want to try to, bring over org mode into Vim and actually make that something that is properly org mode, then that's something that you can really say is something that you've done yourself. Even though Emacs already does it, and you could use Emacs to get the exact same functionality, and you get the exact same functionality quicker, it's not something that you've made yourself. And if you do want to keep using Vim, well, obviously, if you're going to switch over to Emacs, that's not going to be Vim. So you kind of lose out on that part as well. And the exact same thing applies to Cocoon or Emacs or any other editor out there as well. Even though other editors may do all of the things that you already want them to do, if they have a plugin framework and you want to put in the time to actually, make it act like some other editor, if you want to take, say, Vim, and you want to have it act like a terminal version of VS Code, be my guest and do it. I don't think there's any reason that you have to keep Vim just being as a Vim experience. If you want to go and completely change Vim into basically an entire another editor, be my guest. I think that's one of the awesome things about Vim, and that's one of the awesome things about all the people who make plugins for Vim. They allow you to actually build up exactly what you want to be built up, and if the plugin doesn't exist, well, hey, I guess you can go and learn Python or Vim script or any of the other languages you can write plugins in and add into that pool of just awesome stuff that you can do with Vim. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say today. If I say any more, I'm probably going to start rambling and I'm going to start repeating myself. So I'll end it there and I'll cut back to when I'm at home to actually read out my supporters. So a special thank you to Joachim Corbinian, Andrew Craig, Nathan Montezar, Joseph, Peter D. Rowe, Tony Donald, John, Marek, Mikhail, Skeen, Thais, and Silva. If you want to go and support my work, there'll be some links down below to my Patreon and Cointree and all of the things like that. I've got my podcast, which is Tech Over Tea, available on Library and YouTube, and the audio version is available anywhere you listen to audio podcasts. So this channel is also available on Library, BitTube, and BitChute as well. So if you're watching this on YouTube, Library is the place that I would prefer people to watch my content. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.